Hi, everyone. My name is Nina Goradia. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner, and I'm here for a very special interview today with William Ballo. We are going to be discussing the topic of limerence and his journey and how he overcame this. It's such a fascinating story. I'm really excited to hear it again and then ask lots of questions so that we all can apply it in our lives if necessary. And I'm going to allow William to introduce himself in just a moment, but I want to say what I am aware of regarding limerence is that oftentimes it can be a state of infatuation over another person, and oftentimes it results from childhood trauma or just simply not being present during trauma. So William, thank you so much for being here. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and then start wherever you like.
Hey, so what I'm mostly going to be talking about is a kind of unique inner child approach to limerence that I kind of arrived at mostly on my own, but with other people's help. It's been developing over time, and the way I discovered Nina was that I was in Pittsburgh several years ago, and I've been trying to find sources to heal myself, get better for years, and I stumbled across somatic psychology, and the guy who I was dealing with, he said that, you know what, I think somatic experiencing is better than what I'm doing. You should try it out when you get to Indianapolis. And when I got to Indianapolis, I found Nina, and rest is history. So on this topic, so about 2.5 years ago, I had a very close, I want to say she's like a spiritual friend. So basically, we both felt like we were traumatized by our family backgrounds in different ways. And we both kind of exchanged notes. So she would say, hey, I'm reading this book. I said, I'm reading that book. And we had a very close, it was all online, close online friendship and very productive conversation. I felt very close to her. I felt like different synchronicities in my life had less. I was like, we just felt like really closely connected. And so I finally met her in person, and she was just really closed off. She was just like very closed off, like stonewalling. And I said, hey, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm okay. And I was really pushing it. I'm like, I'm not a body language expert, but everything tells me you're not okay. And she just kept saying, I'm all right. And it was just very awkward interaction for that part. And then we had a decent time. So I went home and I was messaging her. She just she wasn't responding. I was like, she like ghosted me or something? What's going on? And so eventually I found out she killed herself. And it was like a very violent suicide, over the top, like it was on the news, like very over the top suicide. Like, and when I heard about this, I was crying, I was tearing up, and like, I was just like really depressed. I was at the grocery store and I learned about it. And I was like walking around. I'm like I was like had this really somber look on my face, kind of looking kind of weird. But I was like totally out of it. And that event really shook me because I had this sense that like it was kind of inevitable that I would reach like a point of more enlightenment or heal from my trauma or get there or something. And like she was so similar to me, the fact she like basically didn't make it kind of like unnerved me. And so I was like, I gotta really go hard at whatever I'm doing. Like, so whatever I'm doing, I have to do it a lot better because I may not make it. So I was working at Amazon warehouse, and I always just subject. I find that work extremely boring. So what I was doing when I was at Amazon, I was really just scanning my body all the time. All the time I was scanning my body. I was like trying to feel my body, partly inspired by the somatic experiencing practice. And I would notice that sometimes there'd be like a point of tension, like, and it would feel like it was psychosomatic. I don't know if that makes sense. There would be like a point of tension, just seemed like kind of not going away. And when I would focus on it for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I would have like a spontaneous visualization of something that happened in my past, like some kind of childhood memory or something. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I kept doing this at work, mostly at work because I was just so bored at work because there was nothing else to do. And I said, I need to do this more because, again, I had that external push of like, okay, my friend didn't make it. I gotta be one that makes it. So when I would get home, I was living alone at the time. I would start to, this is when I started going to the closet. So I would I heard about these dark room retreats in Buddhism. We're in some dark room for like a long period of time. I was like, man, that's so cool. I want to do something like that. Like, how do I do that? It's like, oh, you got to take time off work and it's so expensive. So there's got to be a cheap way to do this. So I just got in my closet turn off all the lights, got my closet, put my back to the door, dark room retreat. And so I would, every other day I was sitting in the closet for hours in the darkness, doing the body scanning. And the same in that place. As I scan my body in the dark, sometimes there'd be like thoughts, relate to certain times of my childhood. And what I noticed over time is as I was in the dark room, it was like layer upon layer would unravel. So the memories that would come up would get like, they would go earlier and earlier in my life, like slowly. It's like, late teens, mid-teens, early teens, pre-teens. They just keep going back and back and back and back and back. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And in January 2020, I had a very powerful experience. So I want to say that my entire life up to that point, I'd had like continuously like spontaneous negative thoughts, like almost all the time of different kinds. And I'll say my default mood was like either negative or neutral. And this was like in early January, there was a point, it was like around 7 or 8 o'clock. It's like all the negative thoughts just stopped. All of them. And like just thinking in general stopped. My overall baseline level of thinking and self-talk and chitter chatter just went from like 100 to like 10 or 15%, just went way down. And I was like, wow. And then my mood shot up too. Oh. And I almost couldn't realize it. I almost couldn't believe it, but my baseline mood went way up and it stayed up, and my default thinking went way down. And it's been like that ever since. Like, but so I attained like a quiet mind essentially. And so that helped because I didn't achieve like big enlightenment or anything, but basically what happened is that my mind was always mostly quiet by default from this point. And it hadn't been for my entire life at this point. It had not been. It had always been like chitter chatter and all these negative thoughts, but it finally all stopped. Okay, so I have a quiet mind now. And so what had happened is that my mind was quiet, my baseline mood was pretty high, but I always felt this, I had this sense of like, okay, there's still some trauma stuck in there somewhere. So it was like above the neck, we're good, maybe. And my heart area opened too. So at the same time, my mind stopped, my chest area like really expanded. It had a spacious like opening. It's like breathing for the first time or something, like felt great. But I noticed like below the chest, there's something's off. There's some kind of tension. There's something stuck in there. And so what I did was, okay, I said, we need to go a little lower. And same thing, as I focused, there was these like memories from certain times of my childhood. And I said, okay, we need to double down the inner child stuff. So what I would do is I started kind of this a little early, but basically, if I had a intrusive memory from the past or something like that, I would basically visualize, some of it might be a photo, but I kind of visualize myself as being that younger child, sit them down, I have my adult self on the other side. I would try to have a conversation. Sometimes I'll write these conversations out. And this is obviously kind of elaborate, but it really did help because basically a big part of my past was not being able to verbalize certain things like getting out. And I would really feel like a deep relaxation of the nervous system when I would do this. So like, and this is where I want to use the concept of, I want to share this concept. I call it hot and cold time. So basically like, if I hug myself and say, hey, William, I love you, like, it may not mean anything now, but if you do it in the middle of a trigger and you're connecting with yourself, and like, so my kind of operating theory is that basically when you're having like some kind of like emotional flashback, which is when an emotional flashback is like non-visual, like it's like your body shifts to a certain mood you can feel it's from the past, but it's not related to currently, but it's not like a visual element to it. Where you have like a visual flashback of some kind. Like if you can connect with yourself and have the right mindset, you can kind of recondition your subconscious if you have the right tools to do it. That's kind of like, we'll get to that later. So I said, okay, we need to get deeper into this. So I was doing more of that stuff, and I said a lot of my inner child, because I was listening to myself. I was really having these dialogues. I would like visualize like if I were a child and what would I want my room to look like that kind of, I was really going deep into what I want the house to be like. I was really going elaborate, and a lot of things that came up were having to do with the relationship with my parents, especially my mother. And I said, okay, so as I was talking to my inner child, essentially, my version of it was probably like 6 or 7 years old. Like this mother wounds kept coming up, mother issues kept coming up. And I said, okay, well, how do we deal with this? And so I used to be a Christian. It's not too relevant, but basically, one thing that I know is that in all these different religions, there's different rituals and different visualizing things, and they have a psychological impact regardless of their underlying metaphysical validity. And so I said, okay, well, maybe I can condition my mind to help myself in a positive way. So obviously Christianity, you're mostly dealing with the masculine deity. And I said, well, what if I had like a maternal deity of some kind? So this started my search for like a goddess figure. So I spent like 2 months trying to find like a goddess or some kind of female deity to like anchor to myself as like a maternal figure. I got all these books, and I eventually stumbled across Guan Yin, and she's like a Buddhist. There's different ways of decoding it, but she's like a Buddhist goddess essentially. And so what I did was I read absolutely everything about Guan Yin that I could. I got deep into visualizations, and basically what I tried to facilitate was my inner child connecting with my construct of Guan Yin, and them having a dialogue. So I had like my inner child with these mother issues connecting with an idealized parental figure that I had spent a lot of time building up. And so when they would have these interactions, I would feel like energetic shifts, because obviously I'm both. I am Guan Yin, and I also am inner child. So when they would have a dialogue, it could get very deep, and like there's some esoteric stuff, some weird stuff that came with that. And it was very, very interesting. And what I would do, especially when I was in kind of an emotional flashback of some kind or some visual thing, like I would often go to Guan Yin as an anchor or as a person to talk to. I even had like this little adoption ceremony in my mind that I even like did like some props and stuff. I really went into it. So that's the basis of if you like my Instagram. So my Instagram was me. I used to have these things I wrote down on pieces of paper all scattered all over the place. I said, I just put this online somewhere I can like have like an organized system. And I really just made the Instagram account for myself, these different poetry things, but other people read them. I said, well, I just need to polish these up. I think it can have more universal benefit. So that's where my Instagram Guan Yin speaks come from, because it's basically me connecting to that part of myself and like showing. It's essentially like a self-love practice in a sense that I'm kind of sharing for like public display. And that's where it comes from. It comes from me having psychological maternal issues, seeking this figure as a kind of consolation, refuge, and then writing down what I hear back essentially.
Amazing. I just want to ask you quickly, William, so is this an archetype for you of perhaps your own maternal aspect of yourself that can then self-parent you? Is that how?
Yeah, that's basically what it is. That's basically what it is. And I do like writing. I like the idea of writing fiction. So I actually try to make this like the most realistic character I can. Just from like I really try to make it's like a real flesh and blood person in my mind, because I'm also thinking it from like a writing standpoint. Like what would this person be like in real life? So I go deeper into it than maybe a lot of people do, but I definitely like that. And there's two aspects to the inner child work I want to mention. So there's the giving side and receiving side. They're both important. So some people are like, what do I say? Like, what should I say to my inner child? But like, this is important as being able to listen. Like, I mean, you have to be able to receive the feedback you're getting, coding the feedback. And oftentimes what happens is I'll have some kind of like intrusive thought or feeling or something, and I'll have to like decode it with my adult brain, and I'll keep guessing. And once I get it right, there'll be like a click. There'll be like some kind of shift where you're like, okay, that's it. And my inner child feels seen, and it'll kind of like calm down. And like what's happened over time is that there's deeper trust. So one thing is that initially this is really hard to do because there's not that trust built up where your subconscious mind, your inner child feels like able to like really reach out and get like a meaningful engagement. And so you're just kind of like, when you try initially, it's like a dry well. It's like you don't really get the connection. For me, it's like very intense at this point. So equally important is like, what do I say? What do I say? What do I say? It's like, are you able to listen to the message? Are you able to actually decode the messages? So now I want to shift to the limerence and inner child issue. So we kind of built this up to, again, I don't want to say this medicine work for everybody, but what's preceded has I built up this deep inner sensitivity with meditation, and then I built up kind of like a therapeutic alliance or like a deep bond with my inner child. So like my inner child does feel like it can trust me to listen and respond with love and kindness and patience. Like, and that's taken a while to build up. This is like 2 years of work to build this up. Okay, so limerence, there's different debates about what limerence is. Some people don't believe it exists, obviously do. It has different experiential aspects. I'm mostly going to talk about like, the obsessive intrusive part. There's different ways of describing it. So here's some elements of it I've written down. So one is extreme fixation on the outcome of emotional reciprocation. I'm gonna say that again. Extreme fixation on the outcome of emotional reciprocation, meaning like you are obsessively focused on how you'll feel once this person likes you, accepts you, appreciates you, that kind of thing. There's like this, so basically there's an extreme emotional identity level dependence. And there's like a very, very deep like self-objectification, meaning like
can you say that again, William? I think it cut out. Self what?
Self-objectification.
Objectification.
So there's subject consciousness and there's object consciousness. Subject consciousness is like I'm looking at you, I am me. Object consciousness is like I identify with who I think you see when you look at me. So when you're in limerence, you're very deep in object consciousness. So deep, like you're like at the ocean floor of object consciousness. It's almost you're like totally disassociated from subject consciousness. It's hard to get out of it or like see yourself from any outside perspective at all. It's very deep. And for me, nobody had told me to really connect this with inner child issues at the time. This was kind of a spontaneous discovery because like, I've had different limerence experiences. So in a past relationship, I actually dated my limerent. So like, there's actually mutual limerence. Like they were limerent for me, I was limerent for them. And they're actually super emotionally mature, and we just kind of worked through it. And we actually had a good relationship. It was actually nice. It was really nice. I was like, okay, it's beautiful. We even both were conscious. There's some traumatic roots to it. We were both conscious of that. He was like, oh, we talked about our childhood issues. Like it was good to me. So, but this latest lady I was limerent with, she wasn't feeling me like that. So she's like, yeah, I don't like you, I like somebody else. And I was like, hey, you know what? You should go talk to that guy. And I was obviously feeling horrible. I'm like, oh my God. So I was like feeling this deep sense. I was like, I'm pathetic, I'm worthless, like everything sucks, I'm gonna kill myself. I was just feeling really bad. I mean, like just like, and the thing is, like, other than this issue, I feel really good almost all the time. So unfortunately, a lot of people when they're dealing with limerence, they also have other issues. For me, it's just this. Like outside limerence, I'm like, brain is great. We're doing good. So I was telling myself I have to really focus on this. Like, what is going on? Because limerence is not external. It's not external interpersonal. It's intrapsychic. Meaning, like, it's not like limerence is not like something like that's out there in the world. It's something that's going on inside my body, inside my mind. Whatever it isn't me. Like limerence is me. So I have to somehow dig into it. And so, like, after I got rejected, I'm like, okay. So I tried to like talk to this person who I liked a lot, and they weren't feeling me. So I'm like, this has to be resolved internally now. There's no other way. There has to be another way to get into this. And so I was at the gas station, and I have a job at a gas station, and it was like not busy. So I was like focused on my body. I'm like, okay, so where's the limerence at? Like, where's it at? And like, okay, so I had like a little headache, a chest. Really feel like it was coming from my stomach. I was like, what is this? And it was like, is there like an inner child aspect of this? It's like, I was kind of exploring that. And a lot of things I'm going to say just come from me observing myself. It's not like I read a book, but basically, when I got into when I kind of explored my limerence, like from like a experiential standpoint, what came up for me was me kind of in my preteen. So like basically, this sense of being rejected and neglected by both my parents, especially my mom was coming up. And so if you think of limerence as a plant, as the top plant, there's this obsession with this person we know in our life, who we like, whatever. Then each plant has a root. So what's beneath that? So for me, and what I don't want to tell people is like, you may discover something different. It's like when you explore your limerence, it might be something different. For me, what I found was, I took some notes. So for me, one aspect of it was there's like an insatiable craving to be seen as my true self. So it's like insatiate with me, like whole body, like please look at me, please listen to me, like begging. And I think that is actually a lot of what limerence is. It's basically like the inner child screaming to the point of like deafening noise, like please look at me, like please look at me, please see me, please. Like I'm like begging like with all their heart to please be seen and heard, and like that's the fundamental thing I think it is. But it's transferred to a romantic person. So basically, there was someone in your life who you wanted to see you as your true self. They didn't do it, and you have this sense of rejection and abandonment and massive anxiety. And this is a term I made up. I call it limeretic suspense. So basically, like limerence just feels like you're in suspense. So it's like you're waiting. It's almost like, let's say you got a test for like cancer and you get the envelope, and it's all going to say you don't have cancer, you do have cancer. And the envelope is in your hand, like you're going to open it. So like the idea is that there's this person you like, and they're either going to like you and you're going to be like in heaven and you're going to know your true self, you're going to know you have worth, and you're just a good person, you're worthy of love, or they're not going to like you. So it's heaven or hell depending on what the envelope says. That's what limerence feels like. So limerence is this begging to be seen, and it's the suspense about the outcome of being rejected, being abandoned once you show your true self. And I obviously agree, it's rooted in the past. And so what happened is that I dug into my limerence and I just saw myself crying as a kid. Like I just felt tears coming up, and I basically told myself like, hey, I see you, I'm listening to you, I believe you're worthy of love, you're worthy of connection, you can be yourself. And like the limerence stopped. Like it just like the symptoms like went from like unbearable, like about to jump out the window, to like basically nothing in like 20 seconds. Like it went like, oh, okay. Because I thought it was gonna take months to resolve, and like it was very like freaky how it just went from like 0 to 100 like really fast. So obviously my theory might be wrong, but the fact that the symptoms stopped almost immediately after I made that interconnection leads me to think it's correct. Now there was a second layer of limerence that I'm dealing with also that came up afterward, and similar things happened that I had so many disassociative memories come up once I dug in that second layer of limerence. It was like insane, almost to the extent where I'm like, I gotta meditate or something. Because like, and not even bad. It's just like so much stuff I didn't remember. I'm like, oh, I didn't remember I did that thought. That so much stuff was coming up. And so for me, like, the roots of the limerence is more interesting than the limerence. Like once you like get to like, there's different layers of the onion, but once I got to a certain layer, I'm like, wow, this is like very fascinating. So like, what happened is that my inner child connection almost went to like a qualitatively different level after I dug into limerence. So like, obviously I've been 2 years into this kind of an alliance built up, but like it got like way deeper after limerence interaction. It went way deeper, like seeing stuff I've never seen before, like aspects of myself I've never felt before, and layers of tension that I've never even like felt, like pelvic tension, anal tension, like deep stomach tension, like stuff that like I've never conscious been there all the time, but I never really felt it till now, until I really engaged limerence. And so I was almost glad I got rejected, because if this person liked me, I would have been able to like really dig into limerence, because it looked like what I found in limerence was just like tons and tons of layers of myself that I've disassociated from. And this one I want to talk about. So also underneath my limerence was very extreme sadness, shame about being sad, and just uncontrollable rage, like anger, anger where you can just beat somebody, like because basically anger at not being seen, anger at being deprived of attention, like screaming at the top of the lungs, and like it's all there, and like so I've cried, I've like shouted, and like I'm like I've not that it's all gone, but it's massively it's so much different than what I thought because basically like there's not too much literature. I've read like probably like a lot of limerence books, but like most of them don't have this approach at all. Like, I can't think of one. They're all like, it's going to take a couple of years, a couple of months, like maybe a decade. I'm like, they don't have anything where it's like, I haven't seen a story like mine before anywhere, but I know that it's been really effective. It's been massively effective. And so if someone wants to explore that, basically what you have to do is, and it takes time, but you have to, in terms of like cause, basically, I think limerence is mostly, at least for me, is mostly about healing emotional self-neglect, basically. So you have, at some point you were neglected in the past, and then you numbed yourself to deal with that pain, but now you're neglecting yourself. Now you got to stop neglecting yourself, which is going to be painful because basically a lot of painful emotions are going to come up. So this isn't going to be like fun with a capital F necessarily. You're gonna be crying and feel anger. You're gonna feel very weird. And I still feel weird now. And part of my ego is like, all this. I still sometimes have stuff come up, but I feel like things are definitely moving, like shifting a lot, and I feel like more powerful as a person because I engaged the limerence head on in a way that it took time to build up. I built up this sensitivity over time. I built up these visualization constructs over time, these journaling practices over time. Like the journaling practice is important, basically. Like, can you feel into what your child is saying? Like, even like put a sentence to it, like some kind of decode it somehow. That takes time also, but it's how I overcame the limerence on a very deep level. And I'm like digging into stuff I've never thought I would ever dig into. That's it. That's what I got.
Amazing. So the reason William's story really caught my attention, and he's given me permission to say this, but he's in our somatic group healing program. So we saw each other 2 days in a row. And so I saw him the first day, really feeling weighed down by this. And we all saw him the next day completely fine and doing great. So we all just couldn't help but drill him. What did you do? Tell us exactly what you did. And then he outlined this process for us. And William, I'm still learning what you did. And I just want to make sure if I'm understanding this correctly. So I'll kind of repeat back to you, but is it that basically you were looking for the somatic emotions and relating to them as an inner child, which we can think of as unmet psychological needs, or even I'm starting to think of it as almost like an unmet felt sense identity, because our ego identity it's in the mind with thoughts, but there's also a component in the body with the corresponding stored emotions in the body. And I'm wondering if you were meeting this with the self-talk and this also with the self-talk, but the observation and the attention and all the somatic skills that you've learned with just how to hold space for it. And then decoding the language of the inner child, because it's not linear, it's not verbal, and then trying to understand what it's asking for and then giving it what it needs. Is that the gist of it? Or I feel like you said more than that. Do you mind reminding me?
Yeah. So this is a little more elaborate than some people. So basically I have like so obviously I'm sitting here right now. I have a different visual. So I try to feel out how old I am and when I get like a feeling, and like I have like a visualized version of myself for that stage. So then I talk to myself. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And it's kind of like it's obviously like using two sock puppets, but basically I get some kind of feedback, and I'm like I try to really listen with my mind and my body what the message is. And then this is coming from outside, but basically like if your 5-year-old self says I feel worthless, what do you say, right? And There's different theories on what to say. There's different questions on what to ask. Like sometimes I might be like, "Oh, you're not worth." I might ask, "Why do you feel worthless?" Because when I try to talk to my mom or dad, they won't listen. So you could be like probing. Like you don't have to like so. I think it is important to be a good listener, not just always have like these dump bunch of dialogues. Like if you can listen, like why do you believe you're worthless? And try to see what they say. And then why do you think you're not good enough? And then we have different people have different worldview, spiritual. So you're gonna have like what you would tell yourself is gonna depend on worldview, like with therapeutic assumptions. But like I think listening is almost 80% of the cure. Like honestly, I almost think I told myself, hey, you're worthy of love and stuff. But like I think the big part was just like I was just listening to myself, like just feeling heard in my pain. Because a big part of it is that we have a lot of us grew up in places where certain emotions were impermissible to express, especially with like real conviction. So like you could be like, I mean, you can be like, I'm angry. Like maybe you couldn't say it like that, but you have to give yourself that permission. That's like you have to give yourself permission to tell yourself things in a very deep level of honesty, which I've gotten there, but it's taken like 2 years. And so if someone's in the middle of limerence now, it might be hard to build up all that sensitivity up and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's worth trying to, because there's really no other way. I mean, like, there's a lot of stuff beneath it, and for me, the stuff beneath it's just as interesting as the limerence itself. Like, there's so much sadness, rage, hidden desires, like desire to like not just negative stuff, but positive stuff. Like, hey, I want to sing. Hey, I want to dance. Like, just maybe you couldn't do that, when you were little. Like, just stuff like that. All sorts of stuff came up. And so, what I would say is that like on the somatic level, you have to be able to feel your feelings and willing to, which is obviously difficult depending on what it is. Because like uh, I'm bad with sadness or like maybe tears. Like tears come up. I'm like, oh, I want to feel like a man and all this kind of stuff. I'll be manly, and so the tears are kind of a struggle for me. And the limerick stuff has really opened up like my lower layers of my body, like so below the chest. That's where a lot of stuff is packed hard, like a lot of fight or flight, freeze response, fear of freeze response, all this kind of stuff is packed in there. And I can feel there's a lot of stuff still in there, but I mean, without the limerence stuff I explored, there'd be a lot more in there. And it's definitely it's been a very spiritual experience in many ways. I hope that answers the question.
That's incredible. So as you're speaking, I'm hearing that, really listening to this inner child, listening perhaps verbally if thoughts come up, but also physically with the feelings that are arising and just holding space for the child. I'm kind of now thinking of limerence as a coping mechanism for not feeling those difficult feelings underneath, like a protective mechanism possibly, or just some sort of mechanism for trying to get those needs met from another that weren't met before. And when we go into those deep feelings underneath the limerence strategy, the sadness, the shame, the anger, the rage that you mentioned, and we feel those through, then this limerence, I would imagine, would collapse as well, because that strategy is no longer needed because we're not running away from ourselves anymore. We're not running away from the effects of the self-neglect. How does that sound to you?
That sounds right. And the big thing, the big thing is like when you're limerent from someone, they do become like a kind of parental figure too. They become like the person who has the power to define your whole identity, your whole world. And like I noticed that it's just hard for me to like mentally step out of the side of the circles. Like I was so deep in this like abyss. And one thing, it's hard. Like I saw again, my theory of emotional triggers is that it's kind of like Wi-Fi. It's like if you can get a message, you can send a message. So it's like if my unconscious can send me a message if I have space in that moment, I can send a message back, which is difficult. But that's like I'm like, okay, I'm having these like obsessive compulsive thoughts about this person. That means that I'm getting a message. It also means I can maybe send a message back, and that's what cut it off. Because that's basically what it is. It's screaming and hollering to be seen and to feel appreciated and loved for who they are. It's a craving for love, a craving for connection. And, obviously I part of me still wishes that my limerent person had liked me back, but there's a lot of benefits to the fact they didn't, because I had to find some kind of internal resolution. And there's a lot of little life adjustments I made as a result of what I discovered through this. I mean, like maybe I'm taking some more dance classes. Like maybe I'll try to sing. Like just because there's stuff that I found I didn't know was in there inside myself, because it was buried underneath a bunch of gobbledygook. So.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I'm hearing that feeling through those emotions really increases self-security within
Yes.
oneself, and then that limerence strategy isn't really needed, and it opens you up to so many things that maybe you'd wanted to do as a child and you're able to do now and express in those ways as well. And I'm so curious about when you're doing that self-talk, so are you visualizing yourself at that age as well? You're visualizing, or is it mostly, okay, that is that in addition to visualizing the somatic sensation itself, or alternating, or
I basically do both. So when I started, I was really big on like having like a photo. I was like really like I do just enough visualization to kind of like get in the mood, then I kind of like don't need it anymore. Then it's all somatic and kind of filling out what comes up. And there is sometimes intrusive visualizations that come up, like related to the past. I'm like, okay, well, like what are you saying? I'm like, for me, it's kind of fun, honestly. Like I find it like at first it's like all like overly serious and painful, but like once you kind of build the trust, it's like it's like actually exciting to have those conversations, and it's very like feels fulfilling. Because it's not all negative emotions. Like there is some like I feel excited, like yes, there's some like bigness there. And I think, and so limerence feels good and bad. So it feels good in the sense of like, now, especially they like you back. They like you back. It's, oh my God, look, this person who I put on a pedestal, they love me and I feel great about myself. There is a lot of anxiety. And there's almost like, so I had a friend, she was in limerence for like 2 years, but like, it's almost like fantasizing about how good it's going to be gets you riled up, but then like you get anxiety about what if it doesn't go well and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of like a mixed bag. But for me, the reason like maybe not all limerence is bad, but like I'm suspicious, and you want to at least explore what it is. So like at minimum, I'm almost certain at this point, limerence usually has some inner child component, like a damaged inner child component on some level, and I'm still exploring my life. I'm still like I had so much stuff come up yesterday. I almost was like maybe I should hold this off to another week, because I had so much come up yesterday. Like so much came up yesterday. It was like all these thoughts, all these like things I've forgotten about, all this like things I want to say to my parents. All these things came up. I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
We could do part two anytime you want. Oh, I'm sorry.
It was just under the surface though. So that's why the limerence is so extreme, because there's so much stuff that hasn't been released or exposed or brought out. And but it's almost like, this is one way, it's almost like if you just pursue the person you like but don't actually explore yourself, you're almost neglecting your inner child again. So if you just chase the person you're limerent for and don't do the inner work, it's almost like you almost need to have another limerent, because you didn't get the message. You missed it. You missed the email.
Absolutely.
If you just had like, and I did. So I had a limerent person who I actually had. They actually was my girlfriend for a while. So I was like, hey, I have obsession with you. So I'm obsessed with you too. We just had a relationship, but I didn't actually explore this stuff. So then it has to happen again, because you didn't do the work. So I think the ideal scenario is that they like you back, and then you also do the work. But if you don't, I mean, like you can at least do the work. So I'm doing the work, and it's really been great. And there's so much stuff that's come up that it's made me rethink who I am, and like it's made me less mind identified. That makes sense. I feel my body more, because like I feel like I've basically been like, so I'm gonna say like teens, early 20s, I've been like neck up. Then after my meditation experience, I was chest up, and limerence has made me limerence has made me like stomach, pelvic area up. It's got me lower. So hopefully I keep going. But without the limerence, I would still just be chest up,
Yeah, it sounds like you unblocked a lot of blockages that were interfering with just the flow of the natural state, where when we integrate everything, it's just all happening together and it's not getting caught anywhere. And
Yeah.
that this opportunity allowed you to develop a deeper self-security. And I imagine all that anxiety is due to the inner child kind of like, am I going to get security from this other person? Am I going to get it? Am I going to get it? And then still repeating that pattern of self-neglect, because that's what was learned to survive one's childhood. But really, we need to give ourselves the exact opposite of what we received. And you also mentioned how much prep work you did to even be able to do that. So, I mean, yes, he did it in a short period of time and he's still working on it, but he spent years learning how to settle the mind, learning how to tune into the body, being able to identify and locate physical sensations of emotions in the body. I'm curious if you might be able to expand on what led up to your mind stopping in that way, where your thoughts died down. Did you do something specific, or was that spontaneous?
I think part of it was just volume. So like again, I was in this dark closet, and I was doing for like, I'm gonna say I was doing for like 6 months at that point. And I don't, this is, so I initially didn't believe like there's the whole chakra system, which I didn't believe in at first, but like it's undeniable. Like it's for some reason my chest area just chose to open up like a deep, like become deeply spacious at that point. And at that same time, my mind just kind of like turned off to an extreme extent. And there's nothing specific I was doing other than I was doing the darkroom stuff just consistently. And I didn't have an agenda. I would just try to, most of the time I would just sit there and just see what happened. I would just let whatever came up. And I think I was just kind of in my heart after that. But then now after limerence, I'm kind of going below the heart after the limerence. I'm like, okay, there's more like, that connection more kind of like your dark animal side stuff. We'll talk about that later. But there's more stuff like, so like, oh, I have compassion and Buddha, and it's like below that, it's like, oh, there's some guttural stuff below that. That's all good.
Yeah, this is so fascinating. Your darkroom experience. I just want to highlight for everyone the fact that you did not have an agenda and you were just being with whatever arose for you. I mean, that's straight up really a powerful meditation. You're letting the mind be kind of put to the side, or letting ego at least being put to the side with agenda, and then you're holding space for whatever arises, which is really an invitation for more to be seen and for more to arise. Does that feel kind of like what you did?
I only want to say to people, so like when I first started, I'm like, so I would go in the closet, take my glasses off, and I'm just my eyes are just totally dark, and my mind would be like, my mind's just going off like crazy. And it would usually take like a 20-25 minute transition period where then it like kind of slows down, then it'll come back up and slow down. And I'm like, that's just part of the journey. So it's not like I just enjoyed it for what it was. And I just kept doing it over and over and over again. And then I had one point I had that. And once I had that experience with my thoughts up, then I got more serious. I'm like, wow, this is working. I'm like, okay, then I just got even more. I doubled down, tripled down. Then I got more deep in inner child stuff because my mind was more quiet, so I could choose little things to focus on. Then it led me to this. So that's one thing, is if my mind was super chaotic, I had like 1,000 emotional problems, it would be hard to isolate the limerence and just focus on that. That's one thing. Like I was able to isolate the limerence because other than the limerence, I did not feel any unhappiness whatsoever. Like, I felt good. So that's one cheat or privilege I had at the time. I could just focus on one thing versus
Well,
like
you
a million
earned
things.
it. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, versus like a million, like, oh, I got this, I got that. It's like, no, this is it.
Yeah, you've done so much work. So for those of you watching, just know that if this is the first thing you're starting off with, it might take longer. It probably will. He's done a lot of work where he was able to isolate one thing and focus on that without other things that may have been connected and reinforcing it. So those things may have to be worked on for other people in relation to limerence. I'm thinking of things like abandonment and loss and grief and all the things that can be connected to limerence for people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really great that people can kind of see your journey with that, and it might not happen in the same order for them.
Yeah, and I might find something different, but I think there's value in at least developing the inner sensitivity is valuable. And if you're a person who's like, I think most of us have some childhood stuff. Most people do. And the problem is we neglect ourselves. So obviously, whatever we originally went through was troubling. But then after that, we kind of was pushing it down. And now I see limerence. I see limerence as the kind of byproduct of my own self abuse, essentially. Like, because like I did not, my subconscious, my unconscious, my inner child was trying to reach out to me. I didn't listen. And limerence is where it really grabs you. It's like, "Urgh." And if you just don't listen, then it's like, okay, well, we'll have to do this all over, I guess. You know.
Yeah, I bet tons of people can relate to what you're saying right now. And I just want to thank you for how courageous it is for you to come out and say this. You know, I asked William before, like, please only share what you want. And he's just shared so much in the hopes of helping other people who are going through this. I really thank you for that. And I had something else I wanted to talk about with that dark room is that on the spiritual path, they talk about sensory restraint. So not indulging so much through the five senses towards pleasure, not because it's bad and you never should, but just to break any sort of addictive quality. And just by virtue of you being in a dark room, you shut out so much other extra, sensory information.
Oh yeah.
That I think that really aided in your being able to get to that place of, going that deep and your thoughts dying down.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, so one thing is like we project a lot, and I notice that like even when I have no stimulation, I just sit in dark. My mind is going so much, so I'm like, wow. You usually think like, well, it's just the environment. It's the environment. It's like, no, it's you. Like, it's you, man. You're bringing this all to the table. Like, I mean, like, unfortunately, it's hard to resolve it because like I see happiness is within, but I mean, obviously that takes a while to unravel. It's not like I'll just look inside now I'm happy. It takes a while, man. Like, it's not like not a microwave.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, you need a map of what you're doing, and then you need to implement those things, and those things take time. But
so I'm gonna say 6 months of dark room led me to the silencing of the mind, and then from I've done like 2 years. So January 2020 when I started the inner child stuff, on top of the meditation stuff, and then that got me to the place where I could do the whole limerence unraveling thing. But if you take all that out, maybe I could have done. So.
Yeah, and even before that, William, you've been working for years doing the somatic work just to get in tune with the body. So everyone's just going to go at their own pace. Yeah,
it's been a while.
But it's just an amazing journey of healing, and just a testament to like this is really possible for people. This freedom around that. I think that we need to self-attach. We need to, know who we are, and then these things like limerence, they're just biofeedback to show us where we need healing, and to then address those parts within ourselves. That's kind of how I'm seeing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us before we start to close?
I got through most of my notes. So yeah, thanks everybody for listening. And if you're going through limerence, like I know it's difficult. I just got rejected by my limer like 3 weeks ago, so I know what it's all about. This is probably my 4th time going through it. But it's my first time going through it after like having more mental clarity, basically. Obviously she'll link to my Instagram, and my Instagram
I want to do that.
And my Instagram is basically just poetry, and that it was poetry that I made to help facilitate more like inner child engagement and all that kind of stuff. I'm always developing new techniques, but my main technique for inner child stuff is basically I don't even see. You have to. I just do it while it's hot. So like I'm just living my life, and if I notice like I feel like a shift or some kind of visual intrusive thought or some feeling, I'll explore it, and then maybe I'll do the journaling where I try to like write like I try to what's the thought, what's the feeling that's coming out, and you'll have like eureka moment. You're okay, that's it. You'll think, oh, that's it, and then maybe I'll visualize something. But like I just try to explore it, and I don't. It's more like you want to know what to do when it happens. So it's like you have a fire extinguisher. You don't just spray it all every day. You spray when there's a fire. So it's more like a limerence was a fire, and I had to expired, and I sprayed it out, and it's like this, so done.
Right, exactly. You want to have that specificity in the approach and in the right timing and in the right location. That's such a good point. So I have a request for your Instagram account. If you ever have a post where you kind of jot out the points of what you did, I'm just curious if you'd ever do a post like that, and then people
I
can
might,
kind of.
yeah. I want to make it. Eventually, I'll make a personal account where I have more like my face and my thoughts on it. But
I see. Okay.
yeah, I'm eventually gonna have like a real Instagram. But for right now, I just have my poetry page. I deactivated my Facebook, so I'm not even on there
Okay.
right now.
Okay.
So if somebody wants to ask me a question, they just gotta go to my Instagram, I guess.
Yeah, no, we'll link it in the description box below. I'm so grateful for you spending this time and sharing with us this level of vulnerability in the hopes of helping other people who are going through the same thing. I think everyone can relate to this in some way, or they have before, gone through something like this. And if you have more insights in the future, you're always welcome for a part 2, and we can continue.
Hey, thanks. It was good talking to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, William. We'll see you next time.
Take
Bye.
care.